you doing?
Hey, Jason. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Human Happy Hour with your hosts, Jason Argento and Rena Goldman. And we're thrilled to have our former guest, Bennie Carollo, return. She is a content creator who talks Marxist-Leninist politics and streams on Twitch and YouTube. And Bennie is also a former Air Force intel analyst and veteran who has 4 degrees and has managed congressional and state Senate campaigns. So welcome back, Bennie.
Yay.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm excited.
I'm super excited. I was so excited that you agreed to do this. I was like, yes. Okay, now tell me about the book you're writing.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, okay, so I'm almost done with it, but like, God knows when I'm actually gonna do like the last bit of it. I've been like mostly done with it for months and months now. It's literally just like an introduction to Marxist-Leninism. I mean, it's an introduction to socialism, but from like a Marxist-Leninist perspective. And so it kind of tries to touch on a lot of the basics of like what is dialectical materialism and like how do Marxists sort of like think about the world and what really is capitalism, because ultimately like Marxism is more a criticism of capitalism than it is its own philosophy. And so that's kind of what I get through. It's like no, like Marxist-Leninism is not about like one strict prescription of policy or like structure of government. It really is just like a methodology of identifying different contradictions within society and addressing them. And it is really just like, how do you address the contradictions that are created by capitalism and address them in sort of like a long-term process? And so a lot of introductions to socialism kind of shy away from like different socialist countries in the past. But this book, instead of being like, oh, look at these big bad socialist scary countries, we're not going to be like those. We're going to be so different. Trust me, bro. Um, it kind of like talks about like the different successes that have existed within those countries and like why they've chosen the specific forms of government they've had over the various periods of time. Um, and then kind of like provides that as like this is like the framework that you use to like understand how to like gradually address these problems. Um, so that you can kind of like have an understanding, hopefully, of like why different socialist countries have done different things over various periods of time, and why socialism in China, for example, looks different than in Vietnam or Cuba. And like that's something that's really interesting. And I feel like a lot of people don't really touch on here in the United States because a lot of people are afraid of saying things like it's good that China, eliminated extreme poverty. Because then you have a million people who are like, oh, but what about all these other bad things that China has done? Um, but like, can we just at least sit on the fact that they've eliminated extreme poverty, like for like a second, and ask the question of why and how did they do that? Um, and so that's kind of what this book does. It's just like an introduction to socialism, really with that in mind. Um, and yeah, I don't know, it's a fun book, but like I need to finish it and I need
Yeah.
to like grow up and finish it a little bit. But also like my life has just been in like such extreme chaos for the past like I was gonna say weeks and then I was gonna say months. And then now I'm like, oh, it's kind of been a couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
April
yeah.
2022, I believe. Um, Socialism. Okay. Have you ever heard of the YouTube channel Second Thought?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Second Thought. They're great.
I've binged the crap out of that, and I've learned and forgotten so much. Differences between democratic socialist and socialism. Like democratic socialists still want to be a capitalist society, which is actually the big problem because capitalism basically eats itself over time. Which I believe we're in end stage capitalism right now, personally. But I think anyway, I feel like that. And oh my god, I love that channel. I was gonna recommend it, but since you're already there, that's
Yeah,
fine.
most definitely. It's really funny. Like, I don't know, like anytime like there've been a lot of times where I like spend a ton of time talking about a particular subject or topic or whatever, and then like a month later I'll see that Second Thought like released a video about it. And it's so funny because like I don't know, I know that like they're not watching my content, but also like I do occasionally make the joke that like, oh, they must be watching my content because like I'll be talking about this and like a month later they do a video on it. And that's wild. But it turns out Marxists just like to talk about a lot of the same things.
Yeah, but for some reason, when I watch it though, I understand it more than I usually do. Like he's really good at organizing his thoughts.
Oh yeah, he's very methodical, very
Yeah,
good educator.
yeah. Sorry, I just got I've been on a totally on a learning socialism thing. Just really into it.
Send me a video, Jason.
I will. I
I'll
think I
watch it.
have, but I will send you it again.
The problem is, so Benny, I don't know. I spend most of my time writing, taking deep dives into things like bidet roundups and interviewing an anal surgeon and an OBGYN and and a plumber. Like, because I have to like write to pay the bills, and so you end up, your time gets consumed with bizarre topics, and then there isn't a lot of time left for like learning for fun.
In fairness, I send a lot of videos to you, Alex.
And I probably am like, I'll watch this later, and then it disappears from the thread.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll stop. But I'll send you a really good one, and you'll it's wonderful. And he always does it in 20-minute bursts too, so it's like very digestible. It's fantastic. Okay, so you said you have had a lot of stuff go on. I know about some of it, the UIT thing.
Yeah, yeah. That was wild.
Yeah, I'm sorry
I don't know.
about that. I know it was also very difficult.
Yeah, no, it was like, I mean, it was kind of like very much like, I mean, obviously I had a million people who were like, oh, she's gonna do like a Dave Rubin grift, which like, I don't know, I guess to all the people who said that, am I doing the Dave Rubin thing? I don't know. Like you tell me. No, I kind of just like jump ship without like, I mean, I had a little bit of a plan. But not like a super plan. I didn't have like something lined up. I just like couldn't really deal with like the transphobic stuff that they kept saying. Because like, I mean, to a certain extent being there is like a tacit endorsement of the things that they say. Even though like I had a lot of freedom to say whatever I wanted, it doesn't really matter if the main guy is like pushing a lot of like really ridiculous nonsense about trans people. And then if like, you know, Anna Kasparian was like running around like fear mongering about hormones for trans youth and like singing praises about Jesse Singal, like I like there's no doubt like anybody who's knows anything about trans people or like the current discourse and like the way the right wingers are attacking trans people right now, it's not a mystery that Jesse Singal is like wildly transphobic. It is not a mystery that he is like actively spreading misinformation to take like these like centrist types who want to seem like they're rational and reasonable and whatever and give them excuses to ask the transgender question. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand why asking that transgender question is in and of itself a problem. And that is just like goes into like, you know, I think a lot of people's lack of education, understanding about like politics and history and like how fascists like organize and mobilize and, you know, trick people into doing things. So yeah, no, I just couldn't deal with that anymore. And I left because, you know, I mean, as a trans person, um, in a state where Republicans are making our existence like something that is like being threatened legislatively, especially like when it comes to like trans youth, you kind of just have to draw like a really hard line. And you know, it's funny, they painted me as an extremist radical. I think Jank literally called me insane or unhinged or something at one point, which was really funny. Um, because like, you know, as you can tell, very clearly unhinged right now. Um, but you know, they like try to paint me as this like unhinged radical when I'm like saying like really basic things like, yeah, I think trans people should be included in sports. Are there going to be standards for like the hormones that you're on and stuff like that? Yeah, sure, probably. But like that's for big science nerds to figure out. In society, we say trans people should be allowed to play sports. It's the job of those big science nerds to figure out what the standards are. Like, but we as a collective society can just be like, no, 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 trans people should be allowed to play sports, figure out how to make it work, right?
Yeah.
But that apparently was like just too much. And he was like, no, no, I gotta like ask all these questions and stuff. And so that was like a whole entire thing. You know, that whole like conversation. And like this was all so long ago. I mean, it was like 3 months ago, but like yeah, I try to reach out to them and like get them to change their minds on stuff or at the very least like stop saying things that were like actively inflammatory. And they just kind of didn't. And like the one sticking point that got me like really mad was this ridiculous line that Anna had said months and months ago, something along the lines of like, oh yeah, doctors are giving hormones to trans youth because they're afraid that if they don't give the hormones to those kids, then they're going to be canceled, right? And it's like, I hate to break it to you, but like medical licenses, they they don't go away when you get canceled on the internet, but they do go away if you're wrongfully giving people hormones when they're not supposed to be on them. So what's the deal here? You know, like you're talking like this is a thing that's happening, but can you provide literally one example of this happening? And literally he couldn't. Jen could not provide a single example, but he was like, but I could see it happening. I could see it happening. And I'm like, well, I couldn't. I don't see a doctor risking their medical license because they're afraid of being canceled on the internet. That's just silly. That's like a nonsense thing. It's never happened. If it has happened, it would literally have been in like the Supreme Court. It would have been like a national case. Like, you know, I mean, how long were Republicans freaking out about the existence of Dylan Mulvaney? If there was a real story about trans people being bullied or pressured into taking hormones when they weren't supposed to, or cisgender people rather taking hormones when they weren't supposed to, that would have been a national story. But it's not a national story because it's not happening. But of course, that doesn't really matter in the land of Jank and Anna brain, where they're the main characters, they're the people that can never be wrong, they're taking on the establishment, but also pushing back against the radical extreme left. Like, I don't know what their deal is. And so it's just like, it's really silly, it's really embarrassing. At a certain point, it just became too embarrassing to keep going there. And so, yeah, I kind of like took the leap and I went off on my own. I'm doing fine. Like, you know, there's a little bit of less stability in the position where I'm at now, but like ultimately it's nice to not have to take the psychic damage, because the truth is, when it came to everything that was going on in TYT, I was kind of like one of the only people that was regularly reporting on like the anti-trans stuff. And
Hmm.
that sucks actually to
Yeah.
do. Like you just kind of take like a lot of psychic damage every day, like listening to people talk about how you shouldn't exist. Um, and you know, and like I could have not covered it, but if I didn't cover it, then who else going to cover it? Like John Idarola is pretty good with that kind of stuff, but outside of that, like it's not really people talking about trans issues, except for the times that Jank and Anna like to, you know, prove how reasonable they are by like going
Yeah.
after trans people needlessly. Um, and yeah, I mean, that was one of the big things that's happened. But there's honestly been a lot since then, even.
Yeah, so that yeah, that is a lot to have to deal. And I don't know if you know, like I'm familiar with working with them. So I have some history there, and Jason as well. And I, it's I was very surprised by all of that. Like, because I was watching things on social and like things play out, and I was like, really? Like, this is the hill they're gonna die on, and they're gonna lose a content creator because of that? And I'm like, because you have to know that you're wrong here. Like, I think I
No,
even responded to it. Like Anna put out some tweet about like, why are we calling pregnant women pregnant people, and something like that. And it's like,
Birthing women, birthing
uh,
people.
oh, was it? I don't know.
Birthing
yeah,
person
yeah, I
or
think it was like
something.
birthing person was the term she was getting really mad at. A term that like nobody uses outside of
Nobody.
like
Yeah,
specific
Exactly.
legislative and medical
yeah.
Yeah,
contexts.
like,
Well,
hi,
it's
this is
also
my birthing person. Like, no.
it's
No one
funny
does
because
that.
I said pregnant people because I do all this writing and health and wellness content, and so yeah, nobody says birthing. You just say pregnant people or pregnant person, which is like a much more natural thing to say.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, it's just being inclusive. And I was like, why are you so upset about this? It was just interesting because I was surprised to see that all play out, but then I was not surprised that they didn't give in and that they didn't listen, like once somebody, because there's just so much ego there
Yeah.
that it's like our way or no way.
Yeah.
And
they had a lot of people come after him too about that. I mean, Al Kalinske, Humanist Report. God, so many left side were just really just saying how wrong they were.
Yeah, like honestly, like
Yeah.
I feel very lucky and honored and happy for like trans people in general with the way that so many content creators were willing to like speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I don't know, you obviously had like folks like Lance from the Serfs and like that whole crowd of like Twitch and YouTube. But then you also had people like Sam Cedar and Emma
Yeah.
Vigeland come in and
Mm-hmm.
basically be like, why are you doing this? This makes no sense. Like, even if you're thinking the way that you're saying you are, just don't say anything because you're being harmful, and you
Yeah.
can choose not to say something
Yeah.
because you're like helping the Republicans like wage this like war against trans people. Like, and I really don't think that like Jank and Anna realize how bad it really is for trans people. Like like Republicans are like one election cycle and a trifecta away from like putting trans people in like camps. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of where they're at. They're already at the stage of like just by default saying that trans people existing in public is equivalent to grooming, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not a far cry away from just criminalizing our existence, which they literally have already tried to do with legislation.
Yeah.
And this is actually something that I tried to get forward, like when Tennessee was trying to pass that drag ban. I was like, no, no, you don't understand. This drag ban would literally like prevent trans people from being in public, from just period stop being in public. Because the thing is, right, like according to the most right-wing cop in the world, am I right now in drag, right? I would say like I'm literally just wearing a normal outfit. You could see a cisgender man rocking around in like a cropped hoodie and like jeans like this, but you know, I'm shaped a little bit different than a cisgender man. Um, and I think that would be more than enough for a police officer to randomly be like, no, yeah, you're doing drag, you're doing it in front of children because you're at Target or Walmart doing grocery shopping. And so now you're arrested. And even if the charges don't stick, you still have trans people being put in jail for how many days while they wait for a lawyer. And that's like best case scenario. Worst
Yeah.
case scenario is like, you actually are found guilty and like put in jail for like how long? And so, because like, of course, we know that like civil rights organizations that theoretically would step in, they wait for perfect victims, right? Like we just have to live in the real world where like civil rights organizations are not necessarily going to, for example, step in to defend somebody if they're like a black trans like sex worker or something like that, or if they have like speeding tickets on their record, or if they have like priors, or anything like that. They're gonna have to wait till it's like, the perfect like, cis passing person who just got randomly clocked by a cop and was thrown in jail. And so how many people then would be thrown in jail? Now, luckily, like I'm pretty sure that law got stopped in the courts before it even went into effect. But like regardless, that doesn't change the fact that that's where the Republicans are at. And that if Republicans win the next election, if they get a trifecta, knock on wood, hopefully they don't. Um, what is going to stop them from passing that as a national law? The Supreme
Mm-hmm.
Court? You really think the Supreme Court is going to stop a Republican trifecta government from like passing some sort of like national drag ban or a ban on like transgender healthcare? Right. And then what happens? Like a lot of people don't even realize how deadly it can be. Um, like, do you know how miserable it is to like live your life without any hormones? Like it actually sucks really, really hard, right? Like you can feel like really, really ill. You can get like osteoporosis really easy and like a ton of other conditions that come from not having any hormones in your system. And trans people who have like already had bottom surgery, or like trans men that have already had like hysterectomies and stuff like that. Um, people who are at a certain point who aren't producing endogenous hormones need those hormones prescribed to them. And so if you just take that away from people, like it's literally torture. It's literally torture. It's miserable. Um,
What would it?
and so
What's it?
yeah.
What's it like? I don't. I mean, I know I probably won't be able to figure it out, but like, what? I'm just curious. I mean, it sounds terrible, but but what do you like? What would be the equivalent? Is there one?
Okay. Let's say, okay, because I haven't had bottom surgery, so like it would affect me a little bit differently. But like let's say I was just to stop estrogen tomorrow, right? Let's say that like all of a sudden I stop estrogen tomorrow. I would probably go through at least a couple weeks, if not months, of like your typical sort of like menopausal symptoms. Um, getting a lot of like hot flashes, being moody, being really tired all the time. You know, because like just all of your hormone levels are just really low, like obviously no sex drive and like a bunch of like depression, anxiety and stuff like that. You know, it's a little bit different, right? Because like
Yeah.
you're not going from more to less, right? You're going from some to none,
Right.
right? And so the symptoms then become like more extreme. Like for me, right? Because like my body would start producing more testosterone again. Um, you know, that would sort of like turn around whenever my body is like, wait a minute, I don't have any hormones right now. Let's start producing some testosterone. Um, but then you get all like the masculinizing features of that, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but it's like a completely different ball game if you've already had like bottom surgery. And that's a huge problem because it's like all of those symptoms, but then like even worse, and for like long, long periods of time, like literally indefinitely. So like, you know, living your life without any hormones is a miserable experience. Humans kind of need those to live.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that is to say, Jen and Anna, I don't think they understand how serious it is. I don't think that they're actually genuinely considering like the impact that their words have on trans people. And I think their silly, weird game of like arguing a weird centrist position is nonsense. It's proven to fail timelessly in history. And if this is just genuinely actually by their beliefs, then I just think they're bigoted at that point.
Yeah. I've always had that. I mean, I appreciated the progressive statements like when I first started watching them, and just over time, I just started. I don't know. I did. It was more of a gut feeling. I just started to. I haven't watched them in forever because it. I like John a lot. Always, he just seems really genuine. But I don't know. There's something about those two. They seem like salesmen almost, or something like angry salesmen. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
and I'm not
know. I
gonna
might be
lie,
wrong, but
I was really surprised. I'm not gonna lie. I was like that literally I felt a little bit blindsided. Um,
Hmm.
you know, with like the weird doubling down and stuff, and it's tragic. Um, you know, I think it's like I don't know, it's a little bit more tragic that like I had a lot of people like harassing me for like a long time after that because they were like claiming I was gonna do a Dave Rubin thing. They were claiming that like I was just trying to tank TYT, or that I was like an extremist radical person. I'm so extreme, because I think that like children deserve healthcare. Um, you
That
know,
is
really
extreme
radical
in this
position.
country, though. You know,
Yeah, yeah, true, true. Um, and so yeah, I don't know. I just had a lot of people from that crowd like coming after me, and it was like a little disheartening. But like it was nice to see like a bunch of content creators like show support because it's very clear that where Jack and Ann are at is not where most of the people on the left are, or even the Democratic Party. Like this is a weird position where they're to the right of like Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yes. There's that chart of where it shows like what is it liberal or right and left, and then the top and bottom is liberal and authoritarian possibly, and
Oh, the liberty, yeah, yeah.
all of our politicians are in the top right except for Bernie, who's just barely over the left line, like just barely, like he's almost centrist in other countries because it encompasses the whole world. It's not just the
Yeah.
United States. And then so like Trump and Biden are like right next to each other in the right, according to the world. So, and like the differences that they argue over are not huge deals, except for they harm people, but their policies, all their policies are still right wing. Like they'll say, I want to create jobs, but then they don't, or they create gig jobs instead, and it's so that was the most depressing thing I ever saw. I was like, gotta get out of this country.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
driving me crazy.
yeah. It's been interesting to watch, like from where like TYT like seemed to be the most progressive like a long time ago, and then like I mean, it really just seems like they haven't moved anywhere or like grown with with the times or and so then and then you have all these new creators that you're like, oh yeah, like these people have evolved and they've learned more, and it seems like there's an inability for whatever reason to be moved by new information, or I don't know what it is, but I was particularly surprised with some of those things, because I'm like, well, you just don't know the science behind that. Like, and I like to say that I'm a person that I don't claim to know something if I don't, like, I'm just like, I don't know enough about this, but maybe I'll find someone who does. So sometimes it's like you just don't have an opinion if you don't know enough about the topics. Like, well, maybe I need to learn more. So it was like interesting to watch them have this just such a strong opinion,
and they don't change their mind at all, and they complain about Trump, how he doesn't change his mind even though you throw all these facts at him. But then I'm watching him literally ignore science and not be interested in figuring it out, just tunnel vision. I'm like, that's what you always say about Trump. Learn that, please.
No, literally. Okay, but like he said something along the lines of like, oh, such and such isn't really in your field. And I'm like, Jank, I have a master's degree in biotechnology. Like, like, am I a complete master of the endocrine system? Am I like an endocrinologist? No. But do I have like a working grasp of how the endocrine system works? Of course I do. Like, literally, of course I do. So like this isn't necessarily my exact field of expertise, but like I know a thing or two, right? And I know a thing or two about trans stuff. My undergraduate degree was in social sciences, and I focused on anthropology, and I've studied trans people all over the world, right? So like, I know a thing or two about trans people. Also, and I know this is a big shocker to everybody here, is I'm actually trans myself. So like I've got 3 fronts of knowledge about trans things, and lo and behold, Jank was like, oh, it's not really your field of expertise. And it's like, yeah, but it kind of is, though, a little bit. Like,
can I have a field of expertise? Would you like to assign one to me?
I guess I didn't go to law school, so I wouldn't know.
And then I also wonder, is it just a lawyer thing, right? That they're just like, no, like I'm the lawyer. And well, both. I mean, the crossover, but but also the thing about, oh, these doctors being afraid of cancel, like, and I'm like, what do you think most doctors are doing, right? Like, do you think that they're content creators everywhere? Like, because I interview have hundreds of clinicians, right? And most of them, like, they don't know what's going on online. Like, they just don't. And even the ones that are heavily quoted, they've got a PR person for that who's like getting them those interviews in place. Like, they're not worried about being canceled. They're much more worried about misspeaking and losing a license, like putting out something that is not accurate. Because I've also worked with them in the capacity of like reviewing content, and we've had to really like go back and forth with some language in terms of it being like a good example is when sometimes we would try to use very inclusive language, and then you would talk about a study, and the doctor would say, well, no, you can't use like if the study says pregnant women, you couldn't use pregnant people, because they're saying, well, the study specifically is talking about this population. So nuances and things like that they care about, because they're like, I don't want to put my name on something that is factually incorrect or that could jeopardize my license in some way. But like that, what they were saying, I was like, that sounds like a made up thing.
No, for real. I think the only doctors that are as online as Jank seems to think everybody is are like the transphobic doctors who are like, like that's not even like their field. But they're like, I'm one of like 6 doctors in this organization that's like designed to like hate trans people, and like they've made it their whole personality. And like most other doctors, like honestly, most doctors, like, and this is a real secret, like this is both good and bad. Most people don't really care about trans people, right? Most doctors don't know anything about trans healthcare, and they don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other. Like when I went to my primary care provider, I literally had to be like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to give me these hormones, and like be like, this is what you can do, right? Like these are the hormones that you can give me, and I would like to take estrogen this way, and I don't want to go on these testosterone blockers because I don't like them. I don't think the side effects are worth it for me personally. I would like to get on progesterone because like that matters a lot to me, and I sort of have read enough papers to be a believer in the usefulness of prog. Um, and then like so like literally I had to like ask for all that stuff myself. Like they literally just like most doctors don't know, and so like weirdly enough, a lot of trans people end up having to teach their doctors how to do it, or like they'll go to the doctor's appointment, the doctor will be like, oh, maybe I'll get you hormones next time, and then frantically Google um what to do. So like most doctors are not caring about trans people, and they're definitely not worried about getting canceled on the internet because like I don't know, they're doctors, and the medical system in the United States is so strained. I don't think most doctors are spending all day on Twitter.
It was
Yeah, and also like most doctors don't even know about menopause. Like that,
Literally.
yeah, there's a huge gap there. Like there's so little just in general that is known. Like I keep getting because I get like all these pitches and PR thing and everything. It's like menopause month and everything. But the more and more things that come out, the less and less we know about like all of these hormone profiles, and like even in like the life cycle of a woman. And yeah, and it's also because mostly it's like cis males that are like a lot of these clinical studies are done in, so because they're like, we don't want to mess with the hormones, like we don't, that there's too many variables there, so they don't want to study anybody that has like fluctuating hormones, in that way. And so it's yeah, I don't, it's a mess. And I just am like, it's because everything is for profit, and that's the problem. There's no incentive to provide actual healthcare. I could rant and rage about the healthcare system for a very long time.
really scary because like I don't think Biden has a chance to win, to be honest. And I don't know about if Trump's going to run, but it doesn't matter because there'll be somebody in the right wing. And then there's that whole what's that thing, 2025, what's it called, the 925 page project 2025. You heard
Yeah,
about-
yeah.
I mean, that's freaking scary as fuck. um I didn't read the whole thing obviously because I'm much, but I did copy the entire thing and put it in the chat GPT and had it break it down for me. And holy crap, is it scary what they're planning on doing. I should probably publish that on the internet actually, but no, because who wants to read 925 pages? But
Yeah.
but that leads me to the question is what do you think is going to happen after the election? Like, I mean, obviously if a right winger gets in there, you touched on a little bit, but what, I don't know, just help me figure out a way to stop it. I'm so scared about it. It's like, because I see the beginning of Nazi Germany happening is what I see. And maybe, and people think I'm crazy when I say that. They're like, oh, calm down. I'm like, calm down. Just look.
I mean, I guess I'll front this with me just saying that like I kind of don't see another Trump presidency in the line. I do think that Joe Biden's just gonna win it. Like I'm gonna be real.
hope so.
I do think that it's gonna be Joe Biden. Um, who knows? I don't know. Like if I'm wrong, I hope I'm not wrong. What happens? I don't know. It really depends on like, do Democrats keep the Senate? Um, and like I mean, God, I don't know. I mean, if you really want me to go down like the complete doomer pathway of like what happens if Republicans get a trifecta, the truth of the matter is like they probably will criminalize the existence of trans people to a certain degree. There will maybe be some states that push back against it. The Supreme Court might nerf it a little bit. But most people are gonna not care. Um, and like I don't know, because like I mean, people need to remember, like the United States has never been a democracy, right? It never in its entire history has there been full voter enfranchisement, for example.
Nope.
And we obviously have like ridiculous arcane systems like the Senate itself, right? And the Supreme Court. And like people forget like how undemocratic our Supreme Court really is. which is just as a random aside, like one of the reasons why people hate figures like Hugo Chavez, for example, is because he democratized their Supreme Court. Because like it was very much set up to be resistant to change, exactly to prevent people like Hugo Chavez from doing like basic like social reforms and land reforms and stuff like that. And just like our Supreme Court is. Um, and yeah, I don't know. That's like, look, I'm gonna be real. I don't think most people are gonna care. And this is like the bad side of most people not caring about trans people, which is like the truth of the matter is a Republican trifecta could literally throw every trans person in the country in a camp, and I think most people would forget about it after about a month. Um,
Yeah.
like that's kind of like the harsh reality.
The moderate white
Um,
person that MLK talked about.
like I mean, yeah, no, but literally, like it's and that's like, you know, like
Yeah.
I mean, they're like they very clearly are Nazis. Like they're not hiding from anybody. You have like
Yeah.
major Republican figures that are running around talking about cultural Marxism. I don't know if you know what that is, but like cultural Marxism literally used to be called Judeo-Bolshevism. That is what like that's literally when they say cultural Marxism, that is what they're referring to. This ridiculous, nonsensical conspiracy theory that there's some sort of secret group of Jewish people that is communist and like trying to replace white people both by turning people gay and trans and like trying to like replace white people with black and brown folks. It's silly, it's deranged, it is also just what a lot of right wingers unironically believe. Um,
Well,
and like they talk about it, like they talk about very, very publicly. I mean, people like, like Matt Walsh don't really hide themselves being fascist. And they
yeah.
will literally call themselves fascist. And when you call them fascist, they'll turn around and be like, oh, so everyone you disagree with is a fascist. And it's like, bro, are you kidding me? Like literally, because they just play this like trolling game. And so yeah, I don't know. I kind of like don't really see the Republicans winning because it just seems unlikely. People seem largely dissatisfied with them. And everywhere that they've tried to like make elections about trans people, they've ended up losing because this is the good side of people not caring about trans people, is that if you make your entire campaign just bullying literal children, people are gonna see that and think that you're a weirdo,
Mhm.
you know? So I don't really have like a solid answer on what happens other than it gets really, really bad. Um, and in like a lot of not really great ways.
Yeah.
Especially with like climate change making things worse. And obviously Republicans are talking about invading Mexico. I mean, yeah, let's say Republican trifecta, they succeed in their unhinged desire to invade Mexico. Well, what happens if they invade Mexico? Well, terrorism on a scale that like Americans cannot comprehend to this day. Like to be real, like I mean, do you know what it would be like if we like tried to invade a country that is like right next to us and like not only would the
Yeah.
American economy collapse because we would be sanctioned by half the world, China would probably do some really obvious plays to like, cut off like different like supply lines to the United States to, nerf the war effort maybe. Um, and if all that happens, the United States would be flailing. I mean, we already butchered Europe's economy. Um, with like the war in Ukraine, we use that as an opportunity to just like move all the manufacturing from Europe to the United States, and like demolish oil markets. And so, like what allies do we have left? Like nothing. Like literally at this point, the United States might as well just be like an island. And so, you take that, you add in the terrorism that would be the response of like, obviously random folks in Mexico and the cartels and stuff like it would just be like terrorist attack after terrorist attack all through like the southern United States. Republicans would use that as an opportunity to like bring in the most extreme racist police state apparatus that's ever existed. Um, like they would already be putting trans people in camps at that point. So like, they'd probably like greatly escalate the racial profiling. There'd probably be a lot of like random forced relocations. This is a matter of like climate change destroying things or not. Maybe they would just let people die from hurricanes. I mean, that's what George Bush did. So, why would a new Republican president do anything different? And it would be horrific. It would be a nightmare. It would get really, really bad. the United States economy would kind of like fall apart. And like, I don't know, there would be 10 years of like miserable terror. Um, and like, I don't know, like, yeah, like that's pretty much like the standard ball game. I don't know if you really want to know what like if you really want to know what Republicans would do at a time like this when socialism is like rising in terms of popularity in the United States and like there's like tons of queer people who are like finally living as ourselves out publicly. Like if you really want to know what Republicans would do, just look at what happened in Indonesia when the Socialist Party was gaining representation, or look at Brazil when the Socialist Party was getting representation, or look at like Chile, obviously. And that's kind of like where Republicans are at. Like they're literally at the point where they are like unironically talking about just like killing anybody that they think disagrees with them politically, and jailing anybody just for being gay in public. So like I mean, the good news is most of the people that are wanting stuff like that are like really old or, really lonely, sad, like young people. Um, and so like I don't know, like I don't really have any calculus on that other than that things just get really, really shitty. But let's hope that that doesn't happen like that.
Yes. That.
I've talked to a few people that think that like some of these things are just that might be inevitable just based on where we are right now. So it's interesting to hear that you seem a little bit more hopeful and that you think that that trifecta is not going to happen. And so what do you predict? What do you think is the most likely thing to happen?
I don't know. I think Republicans maybe are going to hold on to Congress. Democrats are barely going to hold on to the Senate. Joe Biden will probably barely hold on to the presidency. We'll be basically in the same position we are now. And 4 years from now, Republicans, to a certain degree, will be nationally irrelevant. Because like, what do they even have anymore? Like, genuinely, what do they have? And that's what makes them so dangerous, is that they don't have anything and they know that they don't have anything.
Last
Right.
gasp.
Like, no, literally, like, the whole phrase about like a dying tiger is most dangerous. Like, like they really don't have anything. Texas is almost a blue state. If Texas is a blue state 4 or 5 years from now, where's the Republican Party? The answer is it's nowhere. It turns into, I don't know, an insurgency, like honestly, like at that point, because like once again, these people are unhinged and we already have like a ton of right-wing terrorism across the United States, and like I don't know, uh things will get really weird and disappointing, and like I think the United States economy is just going to gradually fizzle and turn into probably something like Germany is today. Well, maybe not even Germany, because Germany's like a little bit bigger economy. um but like I think the United States just kind of turns into like something similar to one of the smaller European economies, because basically the major dominating force in the world is China, right? And if the major dominating force in the world is China, that means US loses its ability to like do imperialism and stuff. Things in the United States get more expensive. Um, at some point in the next 15 years, suburbs are going to be completely insolvent. And so we're just going to see like a lot of like small towns collapse. And not just small towns, but like big suburbs collapse. Like it turns out Naperville can't afford to exist. It just literally can't. It turns out that like single family homes are just terrible and inefficient, and unless you're like constantly doing new housing development, you literally cannot subsidize the existing housing enough. uh, and so like ultimately like you're just going to see the suburbs turn into like the poorest areas with full of condemned housing as like people start to move back into the cities. And then it turns out as people move back to the cities, they're going to turn gayer and more socialister. um and because that's what happens when you meet other human beings, you start to have empathy for them. um and so and then yeah, like I don't know, like hopefully by then climate change hasn't like turned everything to a complete disaster, and like with the suburbs falling apart it turns into um like a lot more environmentally sustainable. Like I genuinely don't know. but that like at this point it's like long-term predictions. Like,
Yeah.
so things will get more expensive in the United States, undeniably. Things are gonna suck really bad regardless. The question is, do they suck in the way of the cost of living is going up and we struggle against capitalism in a similar but more stressful way than we are now? Or does it turn into Republicans are rounding people up and putting them into camps?
Mm. Oh, yeah. You should move to Vermont.
Yeah.
You'd like it here.
I don't know that Vermont would be safe from all of this.
It'll be
Like,
the.
Yeah.
I don't know, Vermont. You'd be surprised. We might. We've tried to get away. We've threatened to leave the country a couple times. We have. But yeah,
that's the takeaway, Jason, is
I
everyone
just
should
want
move
people I
to
care about to
Vermont.
get the hell out of everywhere except come here
Yeah.
because it's nicer and everybody's more
Yeah,
just
I feel
better in every
that,
way.
but like I don't know, it'd be quite the feat to get me and all of my partners out of where I'm at now. Like
Yeah.
that would be a project.
I always say that to people. Just move to Vermont. It's better. Not. I still want. I've been looking into moving out of the country. To be honest with you, I don't know. But you know what it is that no one will take me. You have to make a certain amount. You have to be able to speak another language to go into the countries you'd want to go into. I don't. Nope. For me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never used to be this way. I used to think, hey, with some hard work, I don't know. I feel like I feel like I've lost a lot of faith in changing things, which is bad because I don't want to be that way. I wanna have faith that can help. Don't know how, and it just seems like I keep running up against brick walls that don't listen.
Yeah, I mean, like our system is very much fundamentally designed to not change. I mean, the most drastic change is going to come from labor unions and labor organizing. Like
Mm.
that's like the harsh
Yeah.
reality is like the most radical change is always going to come from like direct action that people do to like demand changes as opposed to like hoping politicians do anything.
Yeah.
Um, it's all about kind of like just changing the environment under which politicians make their decisions. And so like look, like honestly, like if your hope is for a better world, then like and this is my probably one of the most controversial takes I'm gonna have here today. If you hope for a better world, then honestly you should just be rooting for China. Like low key a little bit because
Mm.
like you know, if you're a big fan of world peace, congratulations. Here's a country that's like not invading people, and is literally just like, hey, let's make normal trade deals. And I'm gonna give you a better deal than the United States is, and we're not gonna impose like military force on you or a structural adjustment program to bring you to poverty. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, the more leverage they have in the global economy, the less capable the United States is of like trying to start World War III in some sort of weird like death cry. Um, and instead it just becomes like, well, you know, we're just a normal every other country now, and we have to like accept that reality. And then things would inevitably get worse here for working people to a certain degree. And then it just becomes a matter of like getting people to realize that things can be better. Um, which is one of the reasons why I think it's important to sing the praises of like the USSR or Cuba or the Soviet
Mm.
Union or I already said that or China. Um, that's why I think it's important because it's like you don't need to be a rich country for everybody to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You really genuinely don't. We have way more than enough that we need. We just need to honestly grow up, stop thinking you're the main character, stop
Yeah.
thinking that you deserve anything better than anybody else, accept the reality that we should all be housed just because we all deserve housing. We should all have healthcare just because we all deserve healthcare. Like, no, I don't think everybody deserves like a brand new Xbox every year. And that's okay as long as we all can put food on our tables, especially with like climate change. And so I think more people are starting to realize that and like are trying to like organize around that. But like there are obviously a bunch of people who are like reacting that by like, you know, converting their cars into coal combustion vehicles, which is just really amazing that people are doing that. That's really great, really smart, brilliant five head move there. Um, like but
It's
yeah, I like I don't even I don't know, like, yeah, it just becomes like direct organizing, setting up like mutual aid networks, like meet your neighbors and talk to your coworkers and unionize and set up like food kitchens and stuff and demand more from employers. Like, I honestly think like the best part about socialism is that everybody can just get a little bit lazier, right? Like one of the critiques of like East Germany, for example, is just like literally true. Which is that like it was hard to get anything done in East Germany to a certain degree. Everything would take a long time. And the reason for that was people had like a constitutional right to not show up to work. So like if you need to do grocery shopping while your kids are at school, you can just leave in the middle of the workday, do your grocery shopping, and come back to work. Does everything happen a little bit slower? But yeah, sure. But everybody has their needs met. Sure, not everybody had like a new TV, like some people had in West Germany, but they also didn't literally have queer people in concentration camps like West Germany did. Because, of course, one of the fun history facts that most people don't know is that when the Americans liberated people from concentration camps under Nazi Germany, they just kind of left the queer people in there. Like they just kept a lot of them open as prisons, and we're like, no, 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 you're gay, right? So you actually are gonna stay here. We're not liberating you. Um, really, really, really fun, amazing historical fact about the United States' role in World War II. Um, uh, but like the critique of East Germany is just a little bit true. Like, yeah, things got done a lot slower, but that's actually good in terms of like preventing climate change. It's actually better if we all have a slower pace of life. That's better for the environment, and it's better for our mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, mental health wise, people would even if you didn't have the new Xbox or whatever, you would be happier because like right now people don't have leisure time, right? Like, and that's what you need. Like, maybe you have time to hang out with your neighbor or hang out with like family or to connect and have community because maybe you do have some more time and yeah, which does not exist here anymore, and everything is so fractured.
Yeah, and they also people forget the reason why we have the 5 day work week and weekends off and like got what's some of the other things that it's the socialist movement in the was it 20s 30s, can't remember what it was, but they fought for the 5 day work week and vacation,
Mm-hmm.
minimum
Yeah.
wage and social security and all these different things. That there used to be a huge socialism party or group in this country, and we take that for granted now, and then we call it evil. Like,
Yeah, no, for real. Like, and I guess like one of the things that like this is actually something that Noam Chomsky written about a couple of times, but like, and I think this is really important, right? Is Noam Chomsky talks about the vibe and how the vibe was very different, like during the Great Depression from today. And the key thing is that, like, even during the Great Depression, there was a sense of hope that things would get better. And that hope motivated people to get organized and mobilized and talk to their neighbors. And unfortunately, modern society is very good at creating despair. And so people like it's very important that you do not despair, right? If you're in despair, you aren't going to do anything. You're going to feel like everything's useless and you're not going to like get engaged with your community. You're not going to organize and do like the important things that are necessary. You're not going to like set up housing cooperatives or like food cooperatives or, labor unions and stuff like that. If you're in despair, you're going to be like, I just need to survive. Um, and that's a problem. That's fundamentally like a ginormous, huge problem. You need to have hope that things can get better. And if you don't have hope, then like nothing is gonna get done. And so yeah, that's one of those things that's like really difficult to like get across to people. But it is because honestly, despair is a selfish emotion. Like, let's be real. Despair is kind of a selfish emotion. You're feeling down on yourself. You feel like the world is like, gonna fall apart. And so you're just like, I'm just gonna just sit here and exist. And like, I've been there. Who hasn't been there? This is capitalism, baby. You know, like we've all had our moments of despair, but you can't linger there for too long because it is a selfish emotion, and hope is a collective emotion. You have to have hope that the world will get better. You have to like try to like make the world a better place to whatever extent you can. And it can literally just take the form of something as simple as like going over to your friend's house and doing their dishes, and they come over to your house and do your dishes, because it's, guess what, it's a lot easier to do someone else's dishes than it is to do your dishes, right? And so setting up networks like that of support and care unironically become like very, very radical, because then all of a sudden you have more free time, you have more time with your friends, and you can feel more stable. And you can feel more stable in life. And when you have that certain degree of stability that comes from like, mutual care and support, then all of a sudden it's like a completely different ball game, isn't it? Um, and you might feel like you have a little bit more freedom to go on strike and not work for a week, or then you have a little bit more freedom to quit your job and like find another one, and stuff like that. And so yeah, I don't know, abandon single family homes, abandon the nuclear family, embrace tradition unironically, in the form of like, you know like large complicated household structures and mutual support. um because like I guarantee you that like most people know somebody who is not 100% full-time employed and or like disabled. And it's really great, like, because like, I mean, I'm poly, right? I've got a lot of amazing people in my life, and I'm disabled, and some of my partners are disabled, and it turns out that we function pretty well because like our disabilities are not perfectly overlapping, so we can help take care of each other and still have free time and time to spend with each other, and it's really great. um and so like building supportive care networks like that are very critical, especially in times like this. I don't know, I'm just kind of gone on like a long rant here, but like all that is to say, like, don't despair, have hope, engage with your community.
Yeah, you just reminded me of, going to be a little nerdy, but um, I always loved the scene in Lord of the Rings where Sam doesn't give up. Where he says, "Well, then I'll carry you the rest of the way." And I always like to think of myself as that kind of a person that, even though it's the worst situation it is now, which is what's made me kind of sad about how I've been feeling lately, but you reminded me of that feeling, what you just said, and I think that helped me a lot, actually. I do.
That's
Thank you.
good.
Yeah.
What I think is so interesting is I think, Benny, I think you've got it right, is like that's what people have to do, is like find community, help wash your neighbor's dishes, and like find like, but everything people are reading and clicking on, right, and like that's the world that I live in because I create content in that world, is like self-care and self this and it's like, I mean, yes, you should take care of yourself, and but the narrative is always like, when it comes to mental health, is like there's an issue with you and you've got to fix this, or you've got to self-care, you've got to, and not that like there's an issue with like the bigger structure of things, and like, but maybe if we had some community, or but maybe if I had these other needs met, maybe I wouldn't feel so, it's like, so just terrible, or maybe I'd be able to get up and yeah, I mean, because the things that come through in the newsletters and even the assignment topics, and like everything is like depression, like the despair, like yeah, everything, I mean, you could just see it, and it's like people are not okay. And yeah, I think you're right, that message of like, well, just maybe help somebody else and somebody else can help you, and then maybe you can feel marginally better about the state of things, and then that can be built upon.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like one of the most radical things you can unironically do in society today is go over to your friend's house, do their dishes, and while you are doing their dishes, just chit chat in the kitchen about the problems you're having in life. Because a lot of what exists under capitalism and the mythology that people are told basically says you are the only person that faces problems like these. If you just worked harder, you'd be successful. If you just did this, you'd be successful. Like, just be rich, bro. Hustle and grind. But we all know that's a lie. And so then people just feel helpless. But no, go over to your friend's house, do their dishes, talk about your problems. You're going to find out you both have a lot of the same problems. And then the next day, have your friend come over and they do your dishes and you talk about your problems and they talk about their problems. And now all of a sudden, you both have clean kitchens and you both have a little bit more community. And like you both got to spend quality time with another person. And that matters and that makes a difference. And when you sort of do that, you start to like build a larger community. Um, because like what ends up happening right now in like nuclear households is this like terrible system where basically men will force their wives who also work to do all of the dishes, and then they both just resent each other and their children for existing and draining all of their energy, right? And that sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks really, really hard. Um, and it like that's bad. That's like really, really bad. That
Yeah.
people are in like weird situations like that. And so like I think that, you know, I'm not saying, oh, everybody in the world just needs to be poly, that would fix the world's problems. But I am saying that everybody needs to stop thinking within the context of your nuclear family is like an island that exists in the world, and recognize that you're a part of a community, and recognize that maybe perhaps um, when you think of the people that are like in and of your household, it's worth it to expand that a little bit. And it's worth it to be more involved in other people's households and have other people involved in your household a little bit more, to the point where things are more constructive. Um, you know, because then that leads you to just be mindful to more and other people. And I don't know, it's a better way to go about life, in my opinion, where you just have more people around you that can be there to support you.
Something about Polly.
Yeah, sure.
um, how do you were you ever a person that could get jealous real easily, and then got over that, or were you just never a jealous person? Because I feel like that would be my problem. I,
Um,
where are you going? I'm going over to Richard's house. What? You know, like like that just seems like something I would never be able to deal with, and I mean maybe I'm just not destined to Holly. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody, A, first and foremost, but also B, like to get a little psychology brained about it for a second. Jealousy is rarely its own emotion, right?
Mm,
Jealousy is usually a mask that another emotion is wearing, right? And so most of the time, jealousy is the result of some type of unmet need, right? And so jealousy
mm,
is typically born out of neediness,
mm-hmm.
not necessarily out of like jealousy. And so then you have to ask yourself, like, what need is not being met right now, right? um because like quite literally, like it literally takes away nothing from me for one of my partners to be partnered with somebody else, right? It quite literally does
Yeah,
not take away.
logically, you're right.
Yeah. um but if I'm feeling like it is taking away something from me, that means I'm probably not getting something that I need. And so what is it that I would need then? Well, sometimes it's just care and attention, and then sometimes you just have to say that. You just have to be like, no, I need attention right now, I'm having a hard time. But like obviously in the United States, a lot of people are trained to be like, you just want attention. But like, no, ask for attention if you need attention, like straight up. Like, and you'd be shocked because a lot of the times, like if you find yourself in a situation, you're like, hey, I really need attention right now, I bet you money that your partner is probably feeling the same thing too. Because if you're not getting attention from them and you're not feeling like you're getting attention from them, they probably feel like they're not getting attention from you either. You know, communication is a two-way street type of thing. Um, and so like, you know, then you just spend then what happens? You spend quality time together. Oh no. You know, how terrible if you've communicated your need for attention, you know?
Mm,
And then sometimes you don't need attention and you're just like, no, I'm just gonna do my own little thing. And so what does it take away from me for them to be off at somebody else's house while I'm doing my own little thing? Literally nothing. Because now I just get to do my own little thing. That's perfect. And then you get to look at it from like the other layer of like, well, if I'm feeling tired, if I'm feeling exhausted, if I don't have spoons to like take care of, somebody, um, but they have another person in their life that does and can take care of them, then it's like, cool, I know my partner's being taken care of, so I can focus on my needs in this moment. And so like that's one of those things where the secret is just to communicate and be honest. That's why I think, to be entirely honest, as an autistic person, I very much thrive in a poly environment because like if there's one thing I'm good at, uh, it's just kind of like saying how I feel in a very direct way, and not like really hiding how I'm feeling. But really, you have to know how you're feeling, right? Because most people don't know how they feel. In the United States, we genuinely do not teach people how to understand their own feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anger is almost never anger, right? Jealousy is almost never jealousy, right? These things are always usually something else that is producing it, right? If you're feeling angry, what is happening? Are you afraid? Do you feel trapped, right? What's going on to cause this anger? Are you sad, but just expressing your sadness in the form of anger? Like the same thing with jealousy. Like it's literally the same boat. So it just becomes first and foremost, you have to know yourself before you can really even know what and how to communicate, and then it becomes just a task of communication, like honestly at that point. And so yeah, for me personally, I've never been super jealous. I've always just kind of been like very straightforward and honest. And I've always kind of viewed things like in the way of like, what's not taking anything away from me, it doesn't affect me. So why would I be bothered if you were spending time with so and so? It's like, like you know what I mean? Like sometimes I'm playing
Yeah.
Magic the Gathering and I'm not cuddling somebody. So why do I care if they're cuddling somebody else? I'm doing my own thing. They can do their own thing.
Right.
Uh,
To clarify, sex is exactly what I was talking about, not just time. I
no,
mean,
yeah, no, I know.
okay.
Yeah.
It's like I don't care if I want to hang out with someone. It's fine. Then I can play my video games. But I think it's I don't know what it is. I don't know. I always thought it was evolution because like I read this book called The Dangerous Passion, and it talked about how evolution, jealousy, which I know is not the root emotion because we learned that in acting class. You learn about the well with the actual emotions, and then, but yes, but jealousy is was really important. It's a theory anyway, that it was a really important factor of making sure the species kept going because from one person would want to have a child, but then if you were with someone else, you weren't taking care of your own seed, I guess, or something, some kind of thing like
Um,
that. But
yeah, so that is a really interesting theory. And that is also why I think evolutionary psychologists should shut up and listen to anthropologists. Um,
okay, that's fair.
because because the truth of the matter is, I mean, okay, let's roll back the clock
Okay,
20,000 years in human history.
I'm super excited.
How do you
That was a
know if
great opening,
It
by the way.
was.
I just have to tell you.
We
it
but we ruined
A
it. Go
great
on.
start. Yeah.
um like how do you know if a child is your child 20,000 years ago?
Right. Yeah. You
And so
wouldn't.
I'll also offer you another fact. This is another fun fact, right? So cisgender women sync their cycles, right? Which is a really, really interesting thing. Uh, okay, so this is very interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, that is like a very specifically and directly evolved strategy, to like create uncertainty about parenthood, right? To create uncertainty about parenthood and to prevent sort of the problem that exists with gorillas, where you have like one gorilla that will fight all of the other gorillas and kill the children of like other gorillas. It's really bad. And so what ends up happening is you have cisgender women that will sync their menstrual cycles. So they're all kind of like ovulating at the same time. And you have humans that are living in groups that are like for the most part in close quarters. So pretty much everybody's going to be like cycling at the same time for the most part. Which means that one guy can't literally get everybody pregnant. Um, but then also like there's like a lot of evolved traits to make it like very unclear like who is the father in
Yeah,
any particular situation,
really good
right?
point.
And
Mhm.
if you look at the way that like early hunter-gatherer human societies are structured, there's not really a lot of like long-term monogamous relationships, you know. Um, and you all of a sudden start to find out that everybody kind of assumes that all of the children are everybody's children,
Mm.
because there's no real way to tell whose children are whose. Um, and so everybody just kind of like collectively is raising the children. People might occasionally have an idea that a child might be more likely to be theirs or whatever, but it's all very sort of like loose and indirect. Humans didn't really like evolve in like a monogamous pattern of life. We yeah, we've evolved like sort of a lot of traits to make it very, very unclear and uncertain who is the father, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
like how many times does somebody, for example, get pregnant and be like, wait, I didn't realize I was at this point in my cycle. I didn't realize, it's like the old saying of like, what do you call people who use the rhythm method, right? You call them parents,
Mhm.
right? Like, um,
Yeah.
and it's like there's all of that uncertainty is sort of like caked into like human physiology for the very direct and explicit reason of if you're sleeping with multiple people, you can never know whose kid is whose. So everybody kind of assumes that the kids are their own, so they take care of them. And that's just kind of how humans lived throughout most of society, throughout most of human
Yeah.
evolution.
I
That's
feel
actually
really
why,
stupid right
like,
now because
no,
I'm
no, no,
picturing the
no, no.
Flintstones, my father, a mother. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Now I'm definitely stupid. But no, like that's what it was. I was thinking, well, you're with your wife, you're with your husband, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, why would there'd be no.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so, but like that's one of those things where like evolutionary psychologists will occasionally have this problem of like
Yeah.
reinventing history to fit our current mode of
Yeah.
existence and not really considering like the archaeological and anthropological evidence of like
Yeah.
how humans actually lived. And so like I mean, and it actually leads to like really there's like really fun, like silly traditions that exist all over the world that are like, I don't know, really fun. Like some cultures that literally believed that like you could get more pregnant, right? And so like if somebody was like, "Oh, I'm pregnant," then everybody's like, "Oh, we really have to get this like we have to, finish making
Pile
the
on.
baby," right? And literally though, right? And so like like humans kind of just like we didn't have microscopes back
Right.
then,
Made
right?
stuff
Like we
up.
got like we kind of like had a sense of like sex leads to babies, but didn't necessarily like know all of the like intimate details of like physiology and stuff and like the how the reproductive organs worked at the microscopic level. And so yeah, no, like testing paternity was not a thing that you could do in the
Why I
savannah
didn't think
25,000 years
I don't know
ago.
why I didn't think of
Um,
that a long time ago. It makes
No, it's okay. Like there's a lot of
it's so
people with like
silly.
PhDs and stuff that do this wrong. Like once again, this is just people neglecting the field of anthropology. Um like that's it. It's just people neglecting the field of anthropology. Like I don't know. I'm not a big fan of evolutionary psychologists. Some of them are okay, but like for the most part, like come on, dude, just like please study a little bit outside of your field and
Yeah.
stop working with models and start working with like what have actual anthropologists discovered about early human societies because it's not nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and so like that's not your fault. There's probably some really smart guy that wrote a book that sounded really smart that was based off of really interesting models, but just was not based off of like, I mean, because like humans are not very sexually dimorphic, right? And like in perfectly monogamous species, you will see effectively no dimorphism. So we're not gibbons, right? We're not monogamous species. We're not like this, like, perfectly androgynous, like monkeys that are like mating for life. Um, that's just not who we are, but we're also not like polygamous, right? Like gorillas. Um, because we also are not, we're a little bit dimorphic, but we're not that dimorphic, right? Like men are not literally 3 times the size of women. It's just not a thing that exists. We're sort of this sort of like, you know, gender blob species that we're like a little bit different, but not that different. And that's kind of cool. Like that's kind
Hmm.
of like really cool. And like the other species that we know that are like, dimorphic to the same degree that human beings are like, you know, there are other like polyamorous species. Like humans are sluts. Okay, that's the harsh reality. Humans evolved to be sluts. Okay, um, and to put it crassly, I guess. Um,
So then
and so
psychology
yeah.
changes how we are then from what
Oh
you
yeah,
showed me.
100%. 100%. I mean, because like, I mean, think about the society that we live in. Like, I don't know, like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're watching this, do you feel starved for attention and care and support and love from other human beings? Of course you do, because like we live in capitalist society. So most
Yeah.
people feel like that. And so then you take that, you turn it into jealousy. You tell people it's natural, it's the natural order of things. There could never be anything different. And then all of a sudden people are wondering why they're resenting their wife and kids. And it's like, well, you're resenting your wife and kids because instead of living your own life for your own fulfillment, you lived a life based off a social script that was like quite literally put together in the 1950s by white supremacists that were literally just trying to like reinvent Nazi Germany's propaganda with the nuclear family with an American flair and a little bit of like, evangelicism. And like that's how we got the nuclear family that we have today. It was literally a propaganda campaign. It was literally a propaganda campaign, like very directly by like marketers because they wanted to sell
Mhm.
racist suburbs to people because they thought that labor unions were, organizing just a little bit too well. And so they needed to find a way to segregate neighborhoods and
Hmm.
attach people to specific factories or workplaces. And that's why they built the suburbs. And this was not even really hidden.
Yeah.
This was kind of like very clear, sort of the work of people like Edward Bernays, who sort of like literally put together marketing campaigns with like the Eisenhower administration to like rebuild America in a newer, more racist form. And you're like, Benny, what do you mean more racist? I mean, like quite literally, segregation got worse and to a certain
Mhm.
extent is still continuing to get worse than it was in a lot of different ways. It's just like a little bit more hidden and indirect now than it was, like they outlawed like direct segregation, like by law, and just replaced it with like indirect methods of segregation in employment and housing. Um, and
Redlining.
so, yeah, no, and so like all of that kind of goes back around to like, no, human beings are not really a not naturally monogamous species. And like, I don't know, just ask literally any mother if they feel like they have enough free time taking care of children. Um, like,
In this
and it,
case,
it's,
I'm the mother.
oh,
I'm
yeah.
single now, by the way, and yeah, I have Luke full time, and he's autistic. So like, yeah, it's there's no time. I actually didn't have the time before either, but um, that's wow. And what you said about marriage, and the nuclear family. I mean, we get tax breaks for being married. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the incentive for me. I was like, oh, that makes complete sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
So like, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that's just really wild. Like, I don't know, but like once again, it's not for everybody. There were still people that were like monogamous back in the day, like thousands and thousands of years ago. It was just kind of like not the norm. Um, and even then, those monogamous relationships kind of just took on a little bit different flavor than like the way it is today, because you didn't literally have to build your whole life around somebody. Um, and
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't, there's a really interesting anecdote. I forgot exactly what culture it comes from, and so I feel really guilty about it. But David Graeber talks about it in one of his books, and it's this little like sort of like folk tale, which is like, so a couple moves into town, right? A couple moves into town, and the very first night that they arrive, they start screaming at each other, right? They start screaming at each other like very, very loudly, and they start making noises as though it's like a domestic abuse situation, right? Like intentionally, like they're making it sound like that's what's happening. And um and then nothing happens. And then the very next day they move out of town because nobody came in
Mm,
to check on them or see what's going on, right? And
right.
like I mean, it doesn't quite land, right? Because it's like stripped not only out of its like cultural context, but it's also like now like three steps removed because I'm, taking a bit from David Graeber that he took from, you know, uh, but like the idea is that like, if you're living in a close-knit community, it should like once again expanding the view of what is the household and like is it your business? Well, to be entirely honest, like the idea of like, oh, this isn't your business is kind of a silly concept, right? Like, because I think, and to a certain degree, we recognize this as society, right? Like, if somebody is hitting their kid, we recognize that to be society's business because that is a problem regardless, right? That is a problem regardless. Um, and the question is, where do you draw the line and who do you call when there is a problem, right? And this kind of ties in a little bit to socialism, for example, because like the USSR, for example, had like women's councils and like specific committees within the Communist Party who like their whole job was literally to show up in domestic violence situations to de-escalate them and prevent them from happening, right? And it was like a completely separate organization from the police, right? It was like these people that would intervene in domestic violence situations to protect like women and children. Um, and that's just not something that exists in a capitalist society like today. I mean, literally, what are you going to do? Like, I mean, in a domestic violence situation, what happens not like 9 times out of 10 in the United States is you call a cop, the cop shows up, sympathizes with the abusive father, and then leaves,
Yep.
and does
Mhm.
nothing. And like that's it. And so, um, you know, like that's very unnatural. That's very unnatural. It's very alien. It's very foreign. Um, I think most people realize that that's wrong and realize that that's a real problem that exists, but are sort of unwilling to address it because they're refusing to accept the idea that women and children are not personal property. Women and children are not, objects to be owned by men. But because men in our society are trained and taught that women and children are their property, that they're the king of their own suburban castle, um, that's where a lot of things like jealousy come from because you're literally told, oh, you're less of a man if your wife is going and sleeping with somebody else, right? Oh, you're less of a man if your child comes out as gay or trans, right? Oh, because then you're not controlling your household, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, a lot of like concepts about manhood become about like this like domineering sort of like possessive mentality at the same time that men are also like alienated and isolated and feel like emotionally alone. Um, and so, like, instead of asking for, hey, I need attention right now, it turns into like quite literally violence against women and children, because they feel like their property is not like obeying them in this perfectly ideal way. And so that's sort of like the like extreme conclusion of like, the specific type of nuclear family patriarchy that we have in the United States. But like ultimately, that's like fundamentally what's going on. And so like um yeah, like that's like it's a problem, but that's not how human beings evolved. That's not how we like, that's not really where we came from. Um, we came from like close-knit communities where there's a lot of community involvement in raising children. There's a lot of community
Yeah.
involvement, just sort of in everything that people did. Um, and that's good. That's good because like, I mean, to bring it back to the example of raising children, like I'm like I don't hide the fact that I'm like wildly baby crazy right now, like and have been for like a long time. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm almost 30. So like, you know, uh
Oh, you've got
and
time, almost 30.
yeah, like okay, but like, um like yeah, so like but like I'm really excited to like eventually raise a kid in like a polyamorous household because like
Mm.
straight up, like that there's always gonna be somebody there to take care of the
Yeah,
kid,
that'd be
Mhm.
cool.
right? There's always gonna be somebody there. Um, and you also know that like nothing really bad is gonna happen. Like at least in terms of like from the parents, right? Because like, if you're in a single family home or even a two-parent home, if you have somebody in the family who's like abusive, it's really hard to escape that, right?
Mhm.
But if you've got a whole network and community of people of support, if somebody's abusive, they get kicked out very, very fast. And you're not homeless because you've got other people there just to help take care of you and support you. You've got other places you can go and stay. You've got safe people, the kid will have adults in their life that they can communicate with, that they're comfortable with, so that they can be safe. Um, and so it really like that type of community support network protects people from abuse and it protects vulnerable people from abuse because like I'll throw one more evolutionary fact about humans at you. do you know what one of the most advanced, like, one of the big steps in human evolution that allowed us to have egalitarian societies is?
Thing?
It's okay. No, not farming. Actually, farming was a step backwards.
Oh, okay.
Like oddly enough, yeah, yeah. Um, Human beings are really good at throwing stuff. We are amazing at throwing stuff. We are a species that can throw baseballs at 90 miles an hour. Okay, a chimpanzee cannot do that. Um, and it turns out that that's a really, really great strategy if you're like a early hunter-gatherer human
Mm.
being. Um, to stop, I don't know how much you can swear here.
Go ahead.
To stop assholes from
Mhm.
being assholes, right? Like
Ah,
if somebody's being an asshole, right, you can kind of just throw rocks at them until they leave. If you're like an early hunter-gatherer, right?
right. Yeah.
You can't, it doesn't matter how big, tough, and strong of a guy you are. It genuinely does not matter because if you have five people throwing rocks at you, there's not really anything you can do. Um, and so like that was the strat. Like that was the strat to like dealing with people who are like, I'm this big tough guy, I'm better than you, I'm gonna tell you how to live your life. It's like, no, actually, me and all my homies, we're gonna throw rocks at you until you leave town forever. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, Robert Sapolsky actually, who's a really brilliant neuroendocrinologist, studied like a troop of bonobo or not bonobos, baboons, that kind of accidentally did that, where like all of the like, like larger males who are like really violent, and maintain like a patriarchal system, they all died of tuberculosis suddenly. And the women in the troop were like, okay, we're done with this cycle of violence. And if anybody comes here and tries to start violence, we would just beat them up. Uh, and then no more violence, right?
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, that baboon troop is like much happier and like living like chill lives. Um, and you don't see a lot of the problems that you see in like other baboon troops. And like this is a fantastic study, and like it's really, really cool. Robert Sapolsky, like I highly recommend his work. He does a lot of like research into like stress and physiology, and like he's just really brilliant. Um, but that's kind of like that must have happened at some point in human evolution
Mhm.
because that's how we got like egalitarian societies and our marginally but not entirely sexually dimorphic shapes. Humans are pretty androgynous creatures. Um, and I mean, yeah, humans are pretty androgynous creatures, and that's sort of like a result of like us kind of living in like polyamorous egalitarian societies for like thousands of years.
I don't think. I'm just trying to think of. Do I want to change? Could I change? Why would I change? It's like all the stuff is as long as I'm not a violent person, so I just get jealous if you go have sex with someone else, and I won't want to be with you anymore. I think I'm just gonna stick with that right now. I mean, I don't know what to
No, I
do.
mean, this isn't pressure for anybody to change. This is just kind of like, I mean, you know, hi
Rena.
history is not destiny. History is not destiny, right? But like, it's um yeah, I mean, a lot of people are told that it's natural, and like that's the big thing I'm trying to be
Yeah.
debunk here is the idea that it's natural. But natural is not by definition good. Unnatural is not by definition bad. There's a lot of things in this world that are unnatural. It is unnatural that I'd sit around and play Magic the Gathering, for hours and hours and hours. I don't care. It's fun. It's good. It's not harming anybody. Like, I like playing Magic the Gathering. It's unnatural that we are doing a podcast right now over the internet, right? Like, natural versus unnatural is sort of a silly thing to worry about. The real question is it healthy, right? Um, are you satisfied with your life? And are you feeling comfortable? Do you feel like you're making the right decision for yourself? And do you feel like you're making the right decision for other people? Um, and so like that's really what it boils down to. And I think that honestly, like one of the reasons why I think it's cool, even for monogamous people to learn about poly stuff, for cisgender people to learn about trans stuff, and for straight people to learn about queer stuff, is because once you realize everything that you've kind of been told about like how you're supposed to live your life is really just like a fantasy, and it's not really like, because a lot of people follow these scripts, right? Like people follow this basic social script of like, oh, you go to college, you find a wife, you get married, you have 2.5 children. Um, you know, like once you realize that, no, you actually don't have to follow those rules. You can actually kind of just do whatever you want and whatever is good for you, even if you choose to have the 2.5 children in the suburbs. You will be happier with it because you will be more willful and thoughtful in your decision to do so because you recognize it is what's best for you. But if you're just following the script, then you end up like, you're like archetypal sitcom suburban dad that rents his that like presents his children, or like the mom that gave up on a career, that like presents her children and family and stuff like that. And because like even if it is something that you actually want, you have to sit back and ask yourself the question, is this what I want? Right? Um, and it'll just genuinely make you happier because sometimes the answer is yes. And then you're like, wait a minute. Yeah, the answer is yes. I do want this. This is really dope. Or if the answer is no, then all of a sudden you're like, no, wait, I can actually do whatever I want now. And I can like rethink this and retool this in my brain in a way that I'm more satisfied with my life.
Such an excellent point. I've been finding myself in conversation with a lot of like childhood friends and everything, and talking about like these decisions and how toxic and our childhoods were. And then when you really think about it, you're like, oh, it's because you had these two parents that like just went through the motions, or like two people that should have never been together. Like, and there are all of these similar themes here of like they weren't consciously thinking about like, is this a choice that I'm making because I really want to do this, or I'm happy, or it's in the best interest of me, my kid, or even should I have a kid? And that some people just should not have because you're just that's just not your vibe, and maybe you're not going to be nice to that kid. And so yeah, like we've been having a lot of those types of conversations that but I feel like there's been a big shift in younger generations where like people are starting to think, wait a minute, like I have choices, I should have choices, and I hope that will lead to healthier generations because people are more conscious of these things than they were back then.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I definitely think that, like, I don't know, that's definitely where I'm at. I mean, I was married twice, long-term monogamous relationships, and like they were great, they were fine, I was happy in them. Until I wasn't. Um, but like, yeah, no, I mean, sitting back, taking a think about it, like, and this is one of those things where like, I don't know.
I'll apply it to trans people too, right? I'll apply it to trans people too, right? Because like the truth is, like, okay, first and foremost, being trans isn't really a choice, but also like on some level it should be, right? On some level it should be. And here's why, right? This isn't like a scientific argument, anything. I think the scientific argument is a losing argument anyway, because it's like I shouldn't have to prove why I wanted to trans my gender. You shouldn't have to prove it. But I think that everybody should be encouraged to actively think of their gender as a choice, because it will make you more satisfied with whatever you are, right? Because when you sit down and you think about it and be like, wait a minute, what are the aspects of masculinity or femininity that resonate with me? What makes me satisfied with my life? How do I want to be viewed by other people? How do I want, who I am to like shape my relationships with other people, right? Because at a certain point, an identity is just a relationship that you have with society, right? Like to declare yourself a woman is to say that you are sort of like having a specific relationship with society, or that you have different types of relationship with different people, right? Like, do you want to be a mother to your children? Do you want to be a wife to your husband? Do you want to be a girlfriend? Do you want to be a boyfriend? Do you want to be, like, what do you want to be, right? Once you get to that point, like for me, like when I'm talking to strangers, most of the time I'm using this voice, right? Which is really funny because like a lot of people don't know like where to place me. I was like, is this a pretty man talking to me right now? And you realize though, that's like, wait a minute, if I'm talking to a random cashier, that doesn't have, like it's not a gendered interaction. That's just like
Mm.
It just isn't a gendered interaction. You know, but like my relationship with like my girlfriends or my boyfriend is like, no, I'm very much like I'm their girlfriend, right? Like that's like, you know, and that just feels right. And so you start to realize like where things matter for you, where things don't matter for you, how you want to express yourself. Like, I don't know, most of the time I sound like this. I'm a trans woman. I don't really do anything with my voice. I mean, I can sound like this when I want to, and it's fun. And I like practicing this voice and maintaining it because it's, I don't know, not only is it a fun party trick, but sometimes you just feel it and you're just like, no, I want to sound like this here right now, but not all the time. And it's different for everybody. That's different for everybody. And like, they're different. Like, I also think people should think about gender in a more complicated way. Like, because gender is a lot more than just man, woman. It's more than even man, woman, non-binary, right? It's like a whole horizon of things, right? Like, sometimes the gender I'm delivering is tomboy. Sometimes the gender I'm delivering is bimbo or MILF, you know? Like, these are like all their own things in a lot of certain ways. Like in a lot of ways, I'm like a very basic Midwestern girl, right? Like all of these things are different ways to like express your gender, that can make you like more satisfied and like happy and just sort of like feel right. Like, do I want to just like do I want to go out and just be a dyke today? Right? Is that what I want to deliver? And then when you start to play around with gender like that, it just gets a little bit more fun. You know, and I think more people should sort of think of their gender expression as like an active choice, because I think that on some level it should be, and everybody should embrace that. It's fun and cool and good to play around with like gendery stuff, right? It's cool to be a hot girl that sounds like this sometimes, you know. That's cool and fun and good actually. And like a lot of trans people will sort of get silly with it. Parentheses complementary, right? And then you just find these like really interesting people that like have like all of these different thoughts and perspectives and feelings about like how they express themselves in particular ways, and everything they do becomes like more personal and more meaningful. And also like, you know, when you get to know them, then it becomes like even more meaningful to you, and they're exciting people to know because it's like, wow, this is somebody who's thought through stuff like this, and this is really cool. A lot of cisgender folks don't ever do that. Don't ever like sit in question. Like, I don't know. I could posit the question to both of you right now. Like, how do each of you know that you're cisgender?
I think
Like
So I'll tell you that like one of my very close friends is a trans woman, and so she like we'll talk about childhood or whatever, and then like she just like sometimes blows my mind, right? Like like because I was talking about like being a kid and like picking up bugs and amphibians and loving all that stuff, and then like like adults always telling me, don't you do that, like that's a boy thing to do, and like she'll grow out of that, and she's supposed to think that's icky. And I remember being like so incensed by that, and so angry about like being told that certain things were like genderized, right? And she's like, and so she'll start but I like pulling these things out right when we're talking, and I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. Like you never think about the ways in which you're just forced into that, right? And like to your point, I'm like, yeah, I never really thought about it, because you don't feel like you have a choice to think about anything. You're just like, and then like she had this, I mean, I'm not going to repeat it because I'll probably butcher it, but she's like, you could technically be classified as trans in this like this whole way. And I was like, like, but yeah, she'll just blow my mind like on a regular basis, like just thinking about the things that you just never think about, and even like ways that you might want to express yourself. And yeah, like I used to like growing up with my grandparents, I'd like to go I'd do the work in the kitchen, right? Like they had very like strict gender roles. It's like the woman's in the kitchen and the man is outside doing the yard work. And I was like, as a kid, I was like, well, I'd like to learn both because I see value in both. And so I'd go in and cook with my grandmother, and then I'd go outside and I'd want to use the hedge clippers and everything. And my grandmother would say, well, that's man's work. And I'm like, you know, we can do whatever we want. Like, you know, it's the 90s, grandma. Like, I don't know where the hell I got that from as a kid, but yeah, like I've been thinking about like all these ways in which like you're just like forced into these boxes and you really don't think about it. And you're like, what would if I don't know, if people had the chance to think about it, how would they express themselves, or what would you be?
Yeah, I think about it. I just the other day I thought about it because I was walking down the street with my son, and there's this giant man walking this way, and I was looking down at Luke. I looked up, went, "Hey, good morning," like that, and he went, "Morning," and I was like, "Did I? Why sound? How come I don't do that? Why don't I go, yo, what's up?" Because that's what I'm used to when I see a heterosexual male. They're generally talking like that. Yeah, what are you doing? Generally. But I'm pretty animated. And I'm like, hey, how are you? Or if I go into a store, you know how your voice goes up when you ask a question? Like, do you know where I could find the... And sometimes I'll try not to do that, and I sound like an asshole. Like, do you know where the batteries are? It sounds like a dickhead. I'm always wondering what is going on with me. Why do because everybody always thinks that I'm gay when they meet me, every single time pretty much, and then they realize that I'm raging heterosexual or something. I don't know, but like I think I'm 1% gay. I think I am.
There are percentages.
I don't know. It's more of a sphere than a spectrum in my opinion, and I just think I lose it at wanting to have sex with a man. But I think that I am 1%. I do. I don't think there's. I don't know. I'm working this out by myself in my apartment, so I don't know if anybody wants to bounce
that's
ideas
fine.
off.
Like honestly, no, okay, but like straight up, like straight up, you can be a cishet guy and just get a little fruity with it sometimes, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually cool, right? Hang out with queer folks and you'll realize that like queer folks as a community, generally our favorite types of cishet guys are the people who aren't afraid to get a little fruity with it sometimes, because like on a certain point you got to realize that it's a little bit silly. Like it's really silly if everybody's talking like this all the time, and it's like, why do you feel like you have to talk like that to, like, you know, you have to prove your manhood by like, you know, talking like a deep voice all the time, you know what I mean? Like you get a little silly with it, but like, and that's one of those things where like people are so policed like heavily over like their gender expression, and it's one of those things where it's like, what is going to make you the most satisfied? What is going to make you the most like feel like yourself, right? And so like, you know, I don't know, there's cisgender men out there who are femboys that are on hormones, right? And they're on like estrogen, right? Because that's how they feel comfortable. And that's so freaking cool. That's like genuinely super cool. And I think more people, right, should really like explore themselves in that way, because it will make people more satisfied in life. It will make people more satisfied in life to sit down and think about what exactly are the components of masculinity and femininity that I really appreciate and identify with, right? Like, and that is like, and sometimes it's a matter of like, you know, you're putting yourself in a position of like, you know, like if I'm gonna be a parent, right? Would I rather like sort of like be a mother, or would I rather be a father, right? And like, so there are some folks out there that like are a mother to their children and a son to their parents, right? And they're like, that's like gender for them, right? There's some people that are both. There's some people that are neither. And like, it's all about what resonates with you, what makes you satisfied, what makes you feel fulfilled, and what makes you feel like you are being recognized, what is giving you the relationship with society that you want to have, right? And that right there, I think, is it's just really cool. It's one of those really cool things about being a trans person that I think a lot of people who are cisgender kind of miss out on. Which is just that moment of like self-reflection, being like, what will make me satisfied with my life? What will make me feel comfortable in my own skin? What will make me feel like myself? In a way that is like, you know, like making my like relationships meaningful, with like not just like intimate relationships, but like the world. um you know and so that's one of those things. It's just, yeah, like that's why I think like it should be like, when like going back to like what brought all this in was like, polyamory versus monogamy, gay, straight, cis, trans, all of these things. Like this is not to say being gay or trans is a choice, but it is good if people think of them for themselves to a certain degree as a choice, and allow other people to have the freedom to make whatever choices they want. Because even though we recognize that it's not really a choice, it is good and healthy if everybody in society is like, this is a choice that everybody should be able to make. Because then all of a sudden you are like, okay, maybe I should actively choose for myself, right? Like, I don't know, like sit and ask yourself, like, okay, like like if you're a het guy, what is it about relationships that with women that is fulfilling to you? And I guarantee you it is more than just sex, right? I guarantee you it is more than just sex, right? um there is something about like femininity that is its own appeal. If you're somebody that's interested in men, right, you sit and think about that for a minute and you're like, okay, what is it about like men that I find appealing or interesting or alluring? Like, what is it? What are the features of masculinity that I like? And then all of a sudden, like, not only do you get a better understanding of yourself, but you get a better understanding of like the types of people that you want to seek out as partners, and maybe even like how to be a better partner to those folks. And then like, and it just all of a sudden, boom, you just have like a lot more meaningful relationships with people. um because like, I don't know, because like, look, the truth of the matter is a lot of people pursue relationships just for sex, like that's it. And like there's nothing wrong with that, just having sex with somebody, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong, like literally have sex, have all the sex you want. Obviously, like if it's consensual and stuff like that, but like, you know a lot of people who follow the script, right, that they're given of like the nuclear family script, go to college, find somebody, marry them, 2.5 children in the suburbs. They just started having sex with somebody in college, called it monogamous relationship, never really thought about it too hard. Didn't really ask themselves why they were in the relationship they were. Nothing was super obviously wrong until all of a sudden, you're 37 years old, you've got 2.5 children, and you're like, where did my life savings go? Boy, oh boy, these kids are going to go to college someday, and I can't afford to pay for that. And like, I never really thought about these decisions as I was making them in a meaningful way, and I just kind of slipped into it, and oh dear God, what have I done? Now all of a sudden I like resent my whole family, and then nobody's happy. The kids aren't happy because they can tell, right? Your spouse isn't happy because they can tell. And you're not happy because you're resenting everybody just like everybody else is. And it's not great, right? That's not great. And so like, even just doing that little bit of thought in advance is like, wait, like these are the characteristics, like these are the things that I look for in a partner. That's what I want. Or these are the things that I look for in myself, and that's the type of relationship that I want with the world. Or this is what I'm looking for in terms of my life plan. This is when I want to, like have kids, or like maybe you don't want to have kids, or maybe whatever. Like all of a sudden, instead of following a script and falling into patterns, you're weaving your own tapestry of a unique human being. And that's really cool. And like That's one of the things that's just really dope. And so, like, I don't know, if you're a cishet person, hang out with queer people and be cool, and you'll probably realize a lot of things about yourself. And even if you realize that what you want is the 2.5 children in the suburbs, you will find that in a way that is more meaningful, because you'll probably be more deliberate in yourself and how you seek that out. And you'll probably be more deliberate in the partners that you choose if that is something that they actually want for themselves. But it requires a lot of self-reflection and communication. And unfortunately, a lot of people who think they're communicating aren't even communicating effectively, because they're not even like doing the self-reflection to understand what it is exactly they want or need from their own lives. Like, sorry about this like whole like rant.
No, it's I felt bad because I feel like I'm just going, teach me, and then, it's ridiculous because we're at the 2 hour mark, and I wanted to talk about Starfield and Magic the Gathering, but whatever. You're hungry. I just want to be respectful of your time.
I mean, I'm fine. I don't really have like, I literally like, this was my plan for the foreseeable future, but you two both have schedules, and like, I don't know. I'm a silly internet person. That's my job.
Right. Well, I just want to know, have you played Starfield?
I haven't played Starfield. I'm not gonna lie.
Amazing.
It's really hard for me to get into like RPG games. I don't know why, but I just don't have the mental capacity for them anymore. I got really into Baldur's Gate, and then the Carlock bug where she stopped talking to me
Yeah.
just really hurt. And I was like, why is Carlock not talking to me anymore? Like, what is this? The demon Dami Mommy doesn't want to talk to me. Oh God, no! I've done something horribly wrong, and it, like that glitch broke me. I stopped playing, and I was like, I can't do this anymore, man. I can't do this.
You
This
got
is
into the story really a lot then.
for me. Like, yeah.
I know.
I have no idea what's happening right now because I don't know anything about games.
It'd be like you're
my
watching the
God.
best, like a really great movie, and one of the main characters just doesn't do anything for the rest of the movie, and you're like, what happened? Yeah, it's a glitch. It's terrible.
Yeah, it was brutal. That one was I couldn't recover from that mentally, and it kind of like it killed the game for me a little bit. But
I'm not a big fan of RPG games in general, but the reason why I like this game is because you get to build your own ship, and it's the best way to build your own ship I've ever seen. Still fills my Star Wars itch.
nice.
Yeah. I used to play Magic the Gathering a lot. I haven't in a long time because I don't hang out with people. But I have played it on Steam. Do you ever play it on there?
Arena? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I play Arena all the time. Like, I'm a big like, and I'm getting back into it like hardcore now again. Like, I don't know. I recently started up a Magic the Gathering podcast with my friend Bugs.
Yeah, I saw it. 8 hours.
Yeah, like it's so fun. Like, I love Magic.
Wait,
Like,
explain. Can you tell me what it is? Actually,
okay.
is it a card? Jason said it was a card. Is it a card game or a video game?
And Rena asked if we could teach her how to play, and I almost died.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like,
well, no. What I said was that like, since I know nothing about this gaming world or any of these things, I was like, I couldn't have a dialogue with anybody about it. But like, I don't know, maybe somebody could, like, we could play a sample game and see how terrible that goes.
Oh my God. Okay, so Magic the Gathering, I'll give you the really quick like elevator pitch for it. Okay. So picture Pokemon trading card game, which I'm assuming you have loose familiarity with it because you were alive in like the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And so except for the theory is you are a wizard. You are a wizard in a tower, and you are battling another wizard in a tower, and you have a deck of cards, and that deck of cards is your spell book. And I think that all of my cards have been taken from me
there's a
right
pack
now.
right there.
No, these are all like empty like decks that I'm building. Okay, you've got here's a deck, right? You've got a deck of cards, right? And this is your spell book, and you cast these spells at the other player. And so like if you want, I can get more granular, but you can put down little creatures and the creatures fight each other and can attack your opponent to damage their life. Or you can do fancy instant and sorcery spells that do silly things in the moment. Or you can put down enchantments that change the way things in the board work. It's turn-based. Yeah, you take a turn, and they take a turn, and you take a turn, and they take, et cetera,
And
until
they
the
might
game
have
ends.
counters to your spells.
Yeah.
So how do you remember? How do you keep track of what's happening if there are all
cards.
these spells and things? Like,
I mean,
how do you
it'll all
remember
be on the board. Like you'll literally like put something down on the field, and it'll
Okay,
just
so
sit there, and you'll be
it
able to
stays
read all
there.
the cards. And like, yeah, some of them stay there, some of them don't. And but the things that don't stay there, the effect doesn't stay there either. So it's just like a temporary thing. Sometimes it can be hard to keep track of what everybody's doing, but you know,
What's your
like,
favorite card? What do you have? You have the most expensive one.
okay,
love.
what is my favorite card?
Everyone has one.
I'll go with my two favorite cards. Like, and I have them both right here because I literally just bought them today. I bought a bunch of copies of them. Like Chaos Wand is really fun. Let's see if it'll focus. Can this focus? It's not gonna focus. Oh no, tragic. Okay. This card, basically what it does is you cast other people's spells, right? You pay for and you go through their deck until you find an instant or sorcery, and then you cast it for free. Very, very fun. Very, very fun. I love playing other people's cards. It's one of my favorite play styles. The other is Sands of Delirium, which, let's see if it'll focus.
I love the names of them.
Not gonna focus.
Oh, yeah.
You pay X and tap it, and the target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into their graveyard. Is a very powerful mill card that I run, not in mill decks, of course, because why would you run a mill card in a mill deck? I run it in my like mono green ramp elf deck where I'm producing ungodly amounts of mana.
Oh wow, I haven't played.
You produce 100 mana, you tap this, and you've just won the game.
Wow.
You've just won the game. And it's a pretty epic way to win when everybody's expecting creatures to fly at them, and all of a sudden you're like, no, you're actually gonna mill 100 cards right now.
That sounds OP as hell.
Like, so
wow.
I play really cracked decks that do silly, unhinged things, and I love that for me.
Yeah. Now, do you have any expensive cards?
I mean, yeah. my elf deck is like a $400 deck. It's like
Arena's head just went.
yeah, like I don't know, you like really expensive cardboard. That's what I got. I got a lot of really expensive cardboard.
Yeah.
What does a very expensive card look like?
This is okay.
Well,
Okay.
it's so much goes into it. It could be a collector's card. The artist could have signed it. It could be really old. It could be an out-of-date card. There's so many things that make, and they go for way more than $400. There's some thousands of dollars.
This is not necessarily my most expensive card, but it is a quintessentially expensive card. Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, adds mana of one color equal to your devotion of that color, which it's not gonna focus, which is tragic. It's a really nice card. It's very pretty. It's gorgeous. This thing creates a ton of mana, basically, and mana is what you use to cast your spells, right? This thing creates a ridiculous amount of mana, and the fact that it is a land and it does not come in tapped is wild. So this card is like $40. I also have a foil version of this card that is like $60.
Is that in lamination? Is that why it has a blue background back to it?
Oh no, it's in a sleeve.
Oh, sleeve. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I picked up a card that's like whenever you gain life, or no, whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. I also picked up a card that is whenever you gain life, an opponent loses life. And that's a really fun little infinite combo
Yeah.
there. And one of those cards is like a $40 card. And yeah, I don't know.
The
I
Rena, you
like
gotta get a deck.
magic.
Sounds like a lot of work to learn if you have never
That's why
played
when
this
you
before.
said I should give it a try, I was like,
Like,
Yeah, my secret to success for playing Magic the Gathering is having autism. That's kind of the goated strategy if you're like,
yeah,
like
it's true. It's true. There are a lot of games like that. This game Satisfactory scratches my autism. It's like it's so detailed, and I just love sorting the details out.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know a lot of autistic folks that are very, very into Satisfactory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about it in my sleep. I'm just like, oh, I know I can improve my iron intake. I know it's
yeah, I think I just don't. I lack the memory capacity to keep all of these things. Like I played Dungeons and Dragons like once with the group, and yeah, I was like, how do you keep track of all? Like now I mean, also I was trying to kill everything because I was like, oh, weapons, you can do that. But I was like, how do you keep track of what's going on? Like I don't remember.
You just listen.
Yeah. Yeah, but then when you stop and then you go back to the next, like I'm like I've forgotten everything that we played like the last time,
You get a recap
unless it's
while you're
written
eating
down.
pizza.
I would have to write it down, basically.
That would be wonderful if you were writing it down. Everybody would love you.
No,
yeah, like
literally.
that's probably the only way that I could do is like I would have to take notes.
You'd
and
be that person. You'd be the administrator, the DM's helper.
Well, I mean, otherwise I'd lose the plot or everything that was happening. So
thank you for doing that. Oh, one more thing. Do you ever sing?
Me?
Yeah, like just in general. Not
Oh
necessarily.
yeah, I'd sing a bunch. Why?
Okay,
Is it like
what voice do you want? Because I mean, I'm a singer, and I know that I change my voice to sing because you have to use different vocal cords. Do you want to sing something?
do I want to sing something? I can. I can be a goofball.
I mean, I really,
just
if I wanted to like, if I really wanted to like be silly about it, I would have kept this voice the whole time
and then sung down here.
I had a friend that did that to me once. He sang a Jeff Beck song suddenly, and Jess, and she all of a sudden went to her lower voice for the Jeff Beck song, and I was like, that was amazing.
yeah. It's fun. No,
Yeah.
I mean, there's like a few things that I can sing up here, but like I not a ton and not confident enough to do it in like front of like a million people.
But like I usually for the most part will like sing down here, and if I'm really hamming it up, which I can do today because like I don't know, my low voice today is like really gravelly, I feel like, and I'm kind of scratchy. And so like I don't know. If you want to, I can. I don't know the rules on like if you're streaming on YouTube.
Oh, whatever.
I won't do too much.
I'll cut it out of the edited version.
Yeah. Because it's live, so it's fine.
Yay!
But when it's pre-recorded, it's a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it's my guitar tune. It's not. Bear with me.
Not
bear with me.
Yay! I'm so excited.
Wait. Bum 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 bum. just the one string was out. That's funny. Let's see if we're. I always forget where I need to play these at to be like. House in New Orleans, a cold rising sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. And God, I know I'm one. My mother was a tailor. She sewed my new blue. My father was a gentleman. Down. I'll do like words. The only thing I gamble is a suitcase and a drum. And the only time you'll be satisfied is when you drum.
That's awesome.
I
What are
should
you
have
laughing at?
a full step lower, to be entirely honest. That was a little bit outside of my normal range for that song. But,
Really?
yeah.
Oh, that was awesome. I'm so excited. I was afraid to ask the question, and I'm so happy that I did now.
No, yeah, I mean, I sing all the time, like, to be honest, and like I'll sing all different sorts of ways. It's fun. Like, I love it. It's like a little bit of a party trick. Like, honestly, like, um, it's funny. It's funny to be like, I don't know, being trans is fun. Being trans is really cool. Having a voice that can do that and this is fun. And like being able to switch my voice like just like on the fly like this is like a really fun skill to have, like, to be entirely honest. Like, I love it. It's fun. It's fantastic. I love confusing people over the phone.
That is a really good skill to have. Did it take you a long time to learn how to switch your voice?
Yes and no. Like, yes and no. I don't know how to explain it, but like I've always done silly little voices. I've just kind of always done that just like for fun. And so like it's not really the end of the world to like switch from one to the other because I'm so used to like doing different voices. And like if you wanted to, I could do a 1950s news broadcaster voice and act like I'm announcing the crash of the Hindenburg or something for the first time ever. Oh my goodness gracious, right? And then like literally if you play around with voices like that, you can just get a little silly with it and be like, you know, well, if I can do a voice like this, why can't I do a voice like this? And this one's not as good fundamentally. Like it just doesn't land in quite the same way. But like when you practice around with your voices, you can do lots of silly things with them. Right. You know, like I'm just trying to do like little silly little voices, and it's just like a whole thing. Sometimes you just do it as a bit. It's like really fun. I do this voice a lot when I'm angry and I'm driving because it just feels right, you know, when you're like this guy over here doesn't know how to use a blinker, you know. You know, yeah, and you just feel like you're doing a voice, and you know, sometimes you just want to do it like one way or another, and you know, it's just kind of like really fun and silly about it. And you know, when you just sort of get in the habit of like goofing around with your voice quite a bit, like it's really just a matter of like finding like a certain spot that works for you, right? And so, like, I don't know, when I initially started voice training, my voice was a lot more like this. It was a little bit more airy and breathy and a little bit lower. And I don't know, the way I kind of described this voice was as like a murder mystery podcast voice,
Yes.
where it's just sort of like, and it's like, and that's when they went into the haunted mansion to try and find like the secret of the curse. And, but then it did take me a little bit of work to be able to have like a more normal talking voice that's a little bit less like, you know,
Yeah.
because I feel like if you start talking to people like this all the time, people are gonna
They
like
think it's a
start assuming
secret.
various things. They're gonna be like, "What are you talking to?" Like, it's like a like this is a more intimate sounding voice, right? To like be starting off with, and so you just want to be able to be like a little bit more bubblier and just kind of be loud, right? Because like that's always gonna be the hardest thing is like being able to like project
Yeah.
your words and like get like a lot of volume out of like a voice that's like different than your normal voice.
The other one's a
It's all
falsetto. That's why you're like now you're
which
actually
one?
the
Oh,
breathy voice is more
that
of a
one? That's not really like a full falsetto. It's like I don't
oh
really know how to like exactly say like what I'm doing here. It's kind of I don't know. You're just sort of like piping air through different. You just have like a different posture, like a different like vocal posture.
okay.
And I'm like, I mean, fundamentally, like it's the same vocal posture as this. It's just a matter of like where are you talking through? Are you talking through like,
The
the
diaphragm.
lower parts of your voice and like I don't know. And so you just kind of need to be not afraid to be silly.
Mhm.
That's kind of like the secret to surviving society as a
Yeah.
transgender woman.
Is to embrace being silly sometimes, because some of the things you're gonna do are just gonna be silly. And like, um, you know, but like, yeah, I will do like vocal exercises all the time in like the shower to like practice like both my upper and lower register and like
Goof around a lot. Just because like, it is like it's you just have to find different positions that your voice can be in. And like where I'm at now, I've been talking, this is the third podcast I've done today. And like I did a
Wow.
show today and I was playing Magic in a lab place. So I've been using my voice like mad. And so like yeah, I'm gonna have like a lot more vocal fry. My voice is drier and stuff like that. But um yeah, no, I mean the question is just like how do you get air through your throat in a way that is just gonna sound the way you want it to? And um I wish I had like better explanation of what I do, but
Yeah.
like I'm not about to sit here and give myself the yips over how I do my voice, like just to be real. Like
Mhm.
because it's just like I don't really think about it super
Yeah.
hard. That's kind of the secret is to not think about it super hard and just try
Mhm.
silly things and like unironically, like never beating the cat girl allegations. One of my main vocal warm-ups is literally like meowing in a certain like melody, just to like find like different points in like my register with this vocal posture. Because it's just like a really easy way to do that because like different vowels have like different postures that they like to sit from. And so like one of the things that like I'll tell like other trans women from is like
start talking from an right? Because if you go
right, you're an sort of naturally brings its way up and you just go and then talk through that uh and then like find where to go from there, because like you can still like I can still keep my voice sounding relatively feminine and go down a little bit with it if I want to, um and get like a darker like tone from the voice and still be like lower in a register where like if you were to like analyze this right now, it would be in like the masculine range, but when you change the way that your voice comes through, it sounds like a little bit feminine because like masculinity and femininity in voices is a lot more than just pitch, right? There's also, I mean, quite literally, the secret is timbre, right? And the secret with timbre is that even like galaxy brain genius musicians and voice coaches and all those things can't really explain what timbre is, can't really
Mhm.
explain what resonance is. It's just a certain combination of like traits and qualities and things that just makes things sound a certain way. Um, and so like I don't know, maybe one day scientists are going to figure out the secret of timbre and how to like, and maybe there's some physicist that has like unlocked it and I just don't know about it, but
Right.
like if you literally Google the definition of timbre, it is basically just vibes. It's just the vibes that a particular instrument sounds like and it just kind of sounds like that. Um and so I don't know, what am I doing with my voice? I'm playing around with it. That's the secret.
Fair enough. Wow, this was really fun. So excited being here. Do you want to promote anything, or do you want to what links would you like me to put in places?
Yeah, let's see. What are the big things? Obviously Twitch, benny.gay. You can pretty much find me anywhere at benny.gay. And since I mentioned it earlier and we talked about Magic the Gathering, I will pitch like the Magic the Gathering podcast that I am doing with Bugs Matrix, the legendary amazing human being. It's called My Dad Can Beat Up Your Dad. Is the name of the podcast. It's about Commander. It's a Magic the Gathering thing. If you know what Commander is, then you get it. Like the Commander is the dad, and it's like my dad. If my Commander can beat up your Commander, your dad, right? It's like a whole funny thing. But yeah, My Dad Can Beat Up Your Dad. The podcast on right now it's just on YouTube, but we're going to be putting it on other places eventually.
All right.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I love these conversations. We go over all sorts of topics. So come back anytime and we can delve into these. I love your takes on anthropology, and just like even that whole breakdown was really great.
Yeah,
I feel like there's some good helpful clips for people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this was really fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
And for anybody who's watching, don't forget to what do you want? Instagram? I think that's probably our favorite.
Yeah, mostly We've been we're just a
We've neglected
3-person operation, so
neglected Twitch.
yeah,
a
we've
lot.
neglected some social channels. But yeah, probably Instagram.
was the
Also,
main one.
we are on Twitter and Patreon.
Do we call it X now? Is it X yet?
Oh, I like refuse to call it that. But what's also funny is that like they had to change the whole logo and everything,
Yeah.
but like it's still Twitter.
Yeah,
Dot
I
com,
know,
like
it's
the
so weird.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah.
Cool. All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot. Been a blast.
Or charge cards. I mean, what are you going to do? You can't go without it. So even if everyone chips in like $5 or something, it helps us so much.
Yeah. When I edit, I'll put that in the description too. I think I have that link in there too, but I'll add
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, no problem. That's wow. $2,000 for a ramp.
Like, how ableist is that?
It's like something someone should offer. Hey, do you need a ramp?
Right?
It's...
Like, oh my God, it's bananas.